So with these SQL problems, the first thing I would say is like you really want to have an idea of. I personally call it like the dimension of the data. People really like the word is like the grain. Okay, so it's like get a sense of the grain of the data. Okay, and by that I mean like what does each row represent? And I think I'm pretty sure we did talk about this earlier in the course, but now that we're back, this is the first step, okay? So with window functions, with group by functions, this is really like the hard part. So let's take a look. So I loaded this data set, and the first question is just like, what is the grain of the data? What does each row represent? So the grain of the data is, let's see, it's like each day for a different store, right? You can imagine this is a Favorita. They're like I think they're a grocery store. So for each day, like you say there's 25 different retail stores, how many transactions were there for each day? Okay, so this is per store, per day, right? For each store, for each day, how many sales were there? Cool. So we just save this to SQL, and one thing that's kind of, I guess, like, if we say we want to find like the average number of transactions across all stores, again, like even it's a pretty simple group by, but even just to do that, you should think about like the grain of the data. Okay, so right now we have, a separate row per each store per day, and if we do like how many across all stores across all days, right? That's going to give us back one row. Okay, so it would be like select this. Let's just say select. Just copy this. Select average transactions from store transactions, right? So how many rows are going to get back from here? Just one, okay? This is average transactions across all store, per store per day, right? Across all stores, across all days. So the average is, I guess, 1694. And then, of course, if we want to say like average per day, we kind of all know this, or we can do like group by date. Okay? So so now what's the grain of the data? This represents a different day, right? Each row is a different day across all stores. So you get what this is why you have to just make sure you take that moment to realize like what does my original data set represent? Because if you don't do that, then it's like average transactions for a given store for like a given day. This is average transactions by day. So maybe we should see that too, right? You can do the date, across all stores. Okay, so this is group by. And then the thing that it's like that we can compare it to is limit 5 is window functions. So let's now see that. So notice, of course, like with group by, group by changes the grain of the data, meaning that we started with a separate row for every store per day, right? So it's like number of stores times by number of days, essentially. And then when we did group by, we changed the grain of the data, so now it's just one row per each day. Cool? So group by, let's just write this down. Group by changes the grain of the data, right? Meaning like it changes the dimensions. Window functions, oftentimes we can perform the same aggregates, but it does not change the grain of the data. Okay? So let's just see that. So we can do this. So it's select date. We can do average transactions again. We can do date, ID, I think it's store number. Let's just do transactions to start. Okay, cool. So we're back to our original ID, store number, date, transactions. And now we'll do a window function, and we'll do actually transactions. And let's add a new column for average transactions. And then I'm just going to put over parentheses here. And that's how I normally start, is just like literally writing this out. And this is our window function. We're just going to call this as average transactions. Okay, cool. So here you can see we still have the ID. We still have a store number. So each row represents, a separate store on a separate day. But notice this average transactions column is added in here. And notice it's that same number. This is across all stores, all days, right? So it's the average over the entire data set. All right. The difference between this and group by is that here, this is changing the grain of the data. So even without a limit, there's only one. I'm not quite sure why we're getting actually. I could be. I would expect this number to be the same. It's a little off. I'm actually not quite sure why. Let's see. Do I have a limit here? Oh, I'm doing a group by. That's wrong. Here we're not changing, right? So now we have the same number. So here we're down to just one row. Here we're not changing the grain of the data. Every row is still represents one store per day, how many transactions were there. Okay? So how could something like this be useful? Well, let's say you want to compare, we can see that there's 770 transactions here, but you want to maybe get a sense of, is this high or low, right? So what's the deviation from the mean? So you can do something like that with a window function, okay? So we can say average transactions, or we can say the number, let's do it this way. We'll say the number of transactions minus average transactions, and then we'll call this the deviation from average transactions, okay? Or difference. Let's call it difference. It's an easier word. Okay? So this one has 924, less than the average. This one has 416, more than the average, right? So you can start to see that, what's the benefit of this? Well, we can kind of use this math equation across the entire data set, but still kind of also have our information on a per row basis, right? On our per store, per day basis, right? If I did it this way, if I did group by, I'm losing that. I've lost all the individual stuff, right? And I'm down to just a single row. So that's the idea of a window function, is we still get to, right, perform these kind of aggregate functions over, we're going to get to this. This is called the window. Over a window, right now my window is the entire data set, right? And we maintain the original row. Another way to think about window functions is the window function is really only per this column. Okay, it really only has an effect on this specific column. Whereas when you do a group by, you can see it changes the rows, so it has an impact on the entire return value. Here, it's really just per this one column. Any questions about this before? We're going to now just change the size of the window, but any questions before we do that? Okay, cool.
Hey Jeff, a quick question. So if we wanted to compare the average transactions per group with the average of the all transactions, so in this query you will say average of transactions minus average of transactions over. So this over is what denotes that this needs to do over this specific range, which is empty, means all the
Right,
rows.
exactly. So this is now the entire data set. But let's say, we can get to that now. Let's say we want to say this is, remember we have average, right now this data set is per store, per day, how many transactions are there? Let's say we want to, and we're comparing across the entire data set. Let's say we take this day and we want to say, is this day good or bad for this store, right? So how do we do that? In that case, we want the window to be the entire data set. We don't want to calculate the average of that. We want to calculate the average for each store, right? So let's move to that. So I'll put this in a new line here. So I'll read SQL, the ID, the store number, the day, number. Let's just do number of transactions for now, or let's just do average transactions. So average transactions over, and then here will be partition by. You're just using these words. partition by, like what do you want to split up the window by? And here we'll say the store number. Okay? And we'll call this average per store. So now, notice that this is kind of interesting, right? Because just note, we'll review how we did it, but just notice the result. Here we're getting the same number, 1523, for all the store ones, okay? Once we get to, store 54 at the end, it's a different average, okay? So how did we do that again? It's really this part right here. So we're saying the average transactions over, and then over what window. This is really like saying like over what window. Over a window that's partitioned by my store number, okay? And you can change, this can be different. This could be the sum, right? So sum of, like, what's the total number of transactions across all days, per store. Like, you could do that. So now for store number 1, the average transaction is 5 million, something like that. So you can change this. But just to go back to the average, so the average transactions over partition by store, and we could say average transactions, probably, you could do something like, you could go back to this, right? It would be transactions minus. So if we want to get, is this high or low for this store, right? This would be the number of transactions in this row, right, per this day for this store, minus the average number of transactions for this store. Okay, because remember, I want to figure out, is this high or low for this store? So that would be transactions for today, for this, for this store, over the average in general for this store. And how do I do that? I set the grouping, or what they call the window, to be the store number. All right? And we'll call this difference from store average. All right? And now, here we have, this is the difference from the store average, right? So this was 1,500. So because here we're at 2,000, right? It's 500 above. Here this is 300 above, right? A little over 300 above, below average. Okay, way below average. So this is like, you can imagine how this is used, right? You may want to see, like, okay, like, does this, what are the days that this store does particularly poorly, right, for this store? Because you would imagine that a store like in Manhattan maybe does better than a store, in a more rural area, something like that, right? So it's not fair to be like, oh, yeah, it's worse than average, but is this bad for this store? And then the same thing, like, let's just do it more. You can imagine doing it, like, per day. So what would that be? Just partition by the day. Partition by date. And it would be the number of transactions, and then minus let's just do average transactions. So this time, what is it? This is average per day. So select these columns, ID, store number, date, number of transactions. Here's the average number of transactions. We're not going to change the grain of the data, but we're going to say that this is basically grouped by, or the window here is the date. So every day, across all stores, what was the average number of sales for this day? Okay? And now we should see the same thing for each day. So this is all January 2nd, and you can see that this is consistent. When we get to 2017, August 15th, right, these days are consistent. Let's ask the question. Okay, why couldn't we do a group by within over? Yeah, you would not do that. You wouldn't do the group by here. If you do a group by, it doesn't even, syntactically, it won't even allow this. You say like group by the store. That's not going to be allowed. You want to think that, one thing is, remember, group by changes the grain of the data, whereas window functions really only apply to this one column. Okay? So they're kind of, you can do both. Like, and we can get into that, but within a column, like a group by does not make sense because it's going to have impact beyond that column. All right, so that's not going to work.
Hey Jeff, quick question though. Like, I understand when you say that group by impacts all the grain of the data and it sort of condenses the grouped records. But that is something we are not doing in this case over the whole select result set. We are just doing it within this over. So I was assuming partition by and group by will essentially be the same when it's at least done.
Yeah, it's different syntax. Yeah, maybe they could have used the word group by, like the inventors of SQL, but it's partition by. Yeah. Let me show you one more thing. Before and then I'll give some labs. So I guess I want to show you what if we did do a group by and a window function. Okay. So how would something like this work? Let's start back with our original data set. So here's the ID. So what's the grain of the data, right? Each store for each day, how many transactions did it sell? Okay. Now let's say, how do we do this? Let's say we want to get, let's say we just want to get the average per day. So let's do that. So how do we do this? I don't know if we can, let me see. So we're going to do from store transactions, group by. Yeah, it's actually not going to, I might have to wait to teach you guys this. So if I do a group by, ID, store number, date, transactions, from store, group by, I should do something like the date, and then average transactions. I apologize. Okay, so we just changed the grain of the data, because we did a group by. All right, so now we have for each day, what is the average number of transactions, okay? Now let's say we want the same thing again. We want to say, is this high or low? For this day, this is across all stores, is this a good day or a bad day? Right, compared to the average day. So to do that, it's actually not hard. You have to think that the group by first of all, the group by occurs first. So we've just changed the grain of the data. Okay? So now if we do this is average transactions per day. And then if I do a window function, it would be average transactions over parentheses. What would this be? Average all days. Let's see that. So you see that? Here I'm selecting the day. I'm doing the average per day. When I do a window function, you want to think this is happening after the group by. So we started with day and then the average for each day. And then what we did is we took the average across all of these rows. And we got the same number here. Let me do that one more time. So if we want to compare the average per day against the average of all days, and we can, we'll see something like this again, so it's okay if you're a little stuck here. But, let me just comment this out. Let's start from the beginning. So select date, the average transactions from store, and the way that we're getting this is we're doing group by date. So we're changing the grain of the data, so we just have one for each day. So this is kind of the first step. When you think about it, and also just in order of operations in SQL, the first step is the group by. After the group by after the dimension of the data is changed, then the window function comes in. Okay? So if you want to compare, how we do on each day versus all days, first just think about what's the grain of the data you want. So we want one row for each day. Then we want to tack on this calculation of what is the average for across all days. That comes, both in SQL, like both in order of operations, it comes last, as well as the way you think about it, it should come last. So that'll be the average transactions, okay, over, and then it would just be the entire data set. All right? And here you can see that. Okay, this is average all days. All right. Yes, SQL processes. SQL processes queries in this order from having joined where group by, right? Having then comes basically like what I think of as. I'm not sure if everyone can see this. I'll just copy this below. What Chris pointed out. So it's SQL processes in this order from, right? What's the data we're selecting? The join, where we're going to limit the data, the group by, and then having, right, happens on a particular group by. So like average transactions where it's having over 1,000 transactions, and then comes kind of like like what I think of as like the view level, like what do you see, right? And this window function is kind of like it's really done on like what you see, it's done on this like after the grain of the data has been changed. And then finally limit offset. The other thing to note is, so that's essentially all I wanted to talk about. So just when you're doing this, when you're doing any window functions, it's very common that you're going to have to do both a group by and a window function. I'm going to just say this like throughout the whole day. Do the group by first before that you do the window function. Think about what is the grain of the data you started with. Okay, so we start with date, store number, transactions. What is the grain of the data you want to end with? Okay, so if I want to end with average per day, average transactions per day, and then I want to get, is this a good or a bad day? What should each row be? Each row should be each day. How do I get there? How do I get from here to there? I need to group by day. That way I only have one row per day. Once I do that, press Shift Return, see the result. Once you do that, then you can add in the window function. Then only after you've changed the grain of the data, then worry about the window function. All right? That will, whenever I see issues, I'm sure I will, this is the issue I see. You're not doing the group by first. Okay? Cool. All right, I think that's good for now. So I can deploy this section. It would be, let's see, this one. Here's the SQL order of operations. And then if you finish early, you can get into the next set. All right? Maybe I'll just deploy 2 more. Questions before, let me just pull this up again. All right, so you kind of get, the syntax is funky. There's no way around it. All right? You're gonna have to know, that's part of the reason why I leave it to the end. Is just you're going to have to be kind of sharp with it when you get to an interview. All right. So it's just what's the aggregate, and then over, and then in the parentheses this is where the partition by what is the window. All right, if there is one. Cool. I'll just show you kind of how I would do it. Let me share my screen. Yeah, I'm recording. Cool. All right. So we have this. It's just like, again, I just like to just start off with the grain of the data. Like, what am I starting with, and what does each row represent? So I just have select all from the table. It should be limit 10, right? Oh, good. That is 10 rows. And then let's just think about like what does each row represent. So each row, I can just kind of look at the ID, I guess. It seems like each row is a different title, right? So it's a different movie, and then we have like these attributes like the year, the date published, the genre, how long it is, right? Things like that. Already, if you're like, what are kind of the what are you probably going to be grouping by? You can get it. You're probably not going to be grouping by title, because that'd be a different group for every single row in the data set. So that doesn't make sense. Duration is probably too fine-grained. It's not really categorical. Like if I group by this, it'll be for every minute, like a different group. So you're probably really just looking at these, is my guess. Like year, date, even that's probably too fine-grained, right? But year and genre sound about right. And then, finally we can look at the question. So we reduced our data. So here I guess we give you the end result, and here I describe it. So it's years after 2015. We have a row. So this is the key thing. We have a row for each genre and year. And then for each year and genre, we calculate, the following. But already, we calculate the average length of the movie for each genre and year, the number, and then this thing, the average length for that year across all genres. So the key thing for me, right, is the average genre and year. So let's do that. Let's just start group by genre, comma year, and then for a lot of databases, you're just gonna what do you even get once you do a group by? All you're gonna get really is the genre, the year, and then some sort of calculation you have across it. So I guess we can just do that. Okay, so we have the genre, we have the year, and we want to calculate the average length of the movie. And I just remember, but if I didn't, it's that comma is duration, right? So the average. So for each year and genre, calculate the average length. So again, I'm taking care of all the regular group by stuff first, and then I'll worry about the window function. Okay. So the average length is going to be the average duration, and I'll just put as duration, and I like putting the per genre year. Okay, so I like putting the dimension in the description, right? Because the dimension is can vary now that we're working with window functions. So what is this? Then this is a good way to interpret it. Just look at the first row. For action movies in 1940, the average length is 81. And we can move this. I'll just move it here. All right. So for action movies, 1940, length is 81. In 1942, I guess it really bumped up. And then let's keep going. Calculate the average length of the movie, the number of movies in that category per year. So still probably talking about genre years. So the number is just going to be a count, right? So let's just do that. Count star for each row, right? For this grouping. So we still should be good. I guess there's only one. Oh, and I should have done this first. I'm sorry. And we want to reduce our data to years after 2015. So this is going to be having, right? Because it's after the group by, right? So it's not aware, but having. So having probably year greater than 2015, which makes sense, and probably what's supposed amount of movies, right? So this is starting to look right. Okay, just again, just the dimension of the data, the scope, right? It's probably starting to look pretty good. And if I look at this, right, it seems like it's ordered by the year ascending. Order by year ascending. Okay, so that's getting pretty good. 101, let's just start to see 101.98 for action. Oh, this is saying drama. I wonder if this is genre descending. It doesn't tell me how to order it, I don't think. But, yeah. So I could double check that, but I'm pretty sure this is good. So just again, what do we have so far? We have the dimension of the data looks right. So it's genre year, right, is each row. Then we have some aggregates, right, again, just across genre year. And these are all in my group by. There's not any window function yet. So, and I think I'm basically at the end until I can use a window function. So, okay, number of movies. And now calculate the average length of movies for that year across all genres. So this is going to be, so the thing that you want to think about is, remember, this is duration per genre per year. This is the length, per genre per year. And now with the window function, it's across all years. So again, you can kind of get a sense that you need to use a window function, because at this point, it's going to be across multiple rows. The window is multiple rows in the resulting data set. So if I want to somehow get the same number or have my window be across multiple rows, I can't use a group by because that's going to reduce my data set. I need it. What's the average length across this, all the genres for 2016 and then 2017? That's a window function. So it would go here, I guess. And we'll do comma. We'll call this average duration per, we want it per year. Per year. All right? And that's going to be what? So we're going to say average duration over, and then what's the partition? Right? If I do the entire data set, let's just do the entire data set. What is this? This is, the same value. It's across the average per genre year, right? Like this value is the same across basically all these. It's basically taking the average across all these values. But really what I want is it to calculate a new average for each year. So for that, I need to partition by. So average duration over, and then do a partition by, and partition by year. And now let's see, right? I want a new calculation for each year. So this is the same value, and then this is the same value for 2020, right? And I guess this is probably 2019 has a different value. So this looks right. Okay. What? I'll let you look at it if you want. Okay, but the key thing, is really the approach, like always, which is get the dimension of the data first. Leave the window function for last. The way that I know I have to use a window function, which is I think what I'm getting at in this question, like how do you even know when to use a window function, is if your calculation is across kind of multiple rows of the data. Okay, if there's by a window we mean multiple rows, right, of this resulting set. That's the window. So here, we don't need to use a window function because it's just with amount of movies, because it's just for each row. Tell me the answer. We don't need it, here because it's again for each row. But this one is going down across multiple rows, reset every time you get to a new year. Okay? All right. Questions about that? Cool. Okay, so let's get to the next thing. Sorry. Let's start over. Select all from store transactions. Let's go. So we have this date, we have this store number, transactions. So again, first thing I'm going to do in my head is just recap to me what the grain of the data is. So this is sales per store, right, where we have different grocery stores per day. So every day at a different store, right, there's a different number of transactions. And then this, it looks like, is same store, but different days. Or same day, but different stores. Okay, and I'd expect that then eventually I go to the next day, another set of stores. Okay, so now let's say we want to calculate the total amount sold by store. How would I do that? So again, if I want to just add a new column and not change the grain of the data, it would be the average transactions over, and then sold by store, right? It would be partitioned by the store number. Okay? And let's say average transactions per store. So notice that, right, so that seems about right because we have store 1, and then I'm guessing all the days, and then you can try this out. You can do where store number equals, 2, just to make sure they're different numbers. All right, and they are. So this looks pretty good. Okay, next thing. What if you can imagine that I for each store, I want to get a running total. And by that I mean, let's say there was, 2,000 transactions the first day, January 2nd, and then this number the second day, and then this number the third. And I want to see we have a goal, a revenue goal for each store. And so I want to see how close am I getting for the goal. So to do that, you can do that with window functions. And basically what you need to do is you need to say, what are you ordering the running total by? Once you use the word order by in here, you're going to get a running total. So I'm just going to do it, and then we can explain it. So do order by, and I'm going to do order by the date ascending. Okay, so let's take a look. You can see the first day, January 2nd, for this store is 2,177. Let's do a sum, just so that you can really be clear that it's that this is a running total. So the first day it's 2,111, and then here it's a running total, right? So it's 2,111 plus this value, 1,800, giving me the 39, and then this value is taking the 39 plus 1863, 5807. This is taking this value plus this, gives me 7,300, right? So you can see this is a running total. The way that we get this, okay, is the grouping is still going to be the store number, right? What does that mean? That means this value is going to reset. Every time you get to a new store, we start back at 0, okay? But then, what do I start adding? The ticker is like, start with day 1, how many sales? Start with day 2, how many sales, etc. So again, like if you go to store number 2, you're going to see that we start back over at day 1, okay? And that's kind of what this looks like. All right, so if you want to do a running total, the way to do that is with an order by, okay? And it will by default just order your days, right? But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can really order by, you can order by however you want. Like you can order by the number of transactions. This might be confusing, but you can order by the number of transactions if you want, and it's not going to change these values. It's just going to change the order. It's just going to change the order that these rows show up, but these values are going to stay the same. So if I would do this, I don't know if this is going to be so much fun. It could be confusing. Let's say where store number equals to. I'm not even sure why you want to do it. I'll probably have to do this first. All right. So the point is, notice how high this is. Okay, 20,000. Right? Why is this so high? Because this day is December, right? Or not? It's way higher than 20,000. It's like 2 million. This day is December, so I'm ordering the data set by the number of transactions. I don't know why there's 3 different. Oh, these are all New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve for different years. So the number of transactions is super high for each of those days, but this calculation is, a running total starting from the earliest day of the store, that we had the sales to this day, right, for the store, and then it resets for store number 1. So this number is calculated, again, kind of like what I said about window functions. They're really internal for that column. They only really affect that column, okay? So this is a running total from day 1 of the store to, 2015, December 24th, and I'm ordering by the number of transactions for that store. So this is the best they ever did. And then the best the second best was 2013. Okay? And this is a running total from 2 years earlier, so it's a less. Okay, so the point here is, again, you get to reorder the whole data set how you want. The calculation is going to be internal, right? How you specify. But it's a little confusing, so we can undo it for now. So, point number 1 is basically once you do an order by inside the window function, it's going to start over. All right, so that's why this is 2,111, etc. And we're doing a sum, but you can do an average if you want. So day 1 here is, there's only one day, so it's average of 2,111 divided by 1 is this. And then this average, 1972, is really these 2 days. Okay? The other thing you can do, which I always forget, is you can limit. Maybe we'll talk about this. You can do a sliding window function. Okay? Which means, let's say we don't want the the window to be the entire store, but we only want to look at like a moving average. Okay, meaning like let's look at the previous 2 days, and yeah, let's just do that. I might forget this. Rows preceding. Yeah, I'm probably gonna forget this. I should have looked at it beforehand. Hold on. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, so it's gonna be. Yeah, you know what? I might look at this later. But you can also do a sliding window function. We'll get into that later. I'm sorry. It's something like rows preceding, and then this is if you want to only look at the previous 2 rows and then and start over. But we'll get to that. I'll prepare a little bit more on that. Okay, so this is the order by date. Any other thing to like look at? I think we're pretty good. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Kyle. So rows between, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that separately. It is pretty complicated. Probably deserves its own lesson. Okay, so this is kind of the running total window functions. I think you're pretty good. You can see this rank based thing. So what this is saying is, you can see that we're doing an average. You can see that here we're doing like an average number of transactions, right? A running average or a running total if you want. What you can also do is you can do like a rank-based window function. So what that would be is, let's say we want to say, how many, for this store number, here's the average transactions per store, and then I want to say, how does this rank? So rank over, let's partition by, we'll partition by the store number, and this time we will order by transactions. All right, and we'll say descending. So basically, what I'm saying is, what number does this rank? How well does this do for this store? Like, what is the rank? Is this number 1? It's best it's ever done, or like, how good is it? So let's do that. So this will be rank. All right. So you can see as rank per store per day basically. All right. So this is how well this store did ever, kind of, for this day. So this is the best day. This is the 30th best day the store ever did, which is probably sounds about right, because the day after, the holiday season. So that's why it's probably pretty high. So again, what I'm doing is I'm using this thing called a rank, okay? And this is like you get a few extra functions here that are just particular. They're almost like aggregates, and they're just pertain to window functions. And basically what you get is you get these things called rank, dense rank, percentile, and row number. And a good way to see it, now that we've kind of shown the use case, a good way to see it is at the very bottom here. What I'm doing is, or what this Stack Overflow is doing is, we have this data set, and the rank is just, we order by, the value. So A, B, C, D, E. Okay? There's a 3-way tie for first place, right? Letter A shows up 3 times. So when you do rank, it's these guys tie for first place. Then this guy technically, I guess, is in 4th place, right? Because there's a 3-way tie for first place. And then you go to 5th, there's a 2-way tie here, so this guy's actually technically 7th. All right? That's rank. You also get this function called dense rank. The way dense rank works is the numbers all touch. So here there's a 3-way tie for first place, and then it doesn't say number 4, it calls it 2nd place. So again, with dense rank, you think the numbers all touch. There's no gaps in between them. So that's why here there's 3, and then here there's 4. So all the numbers are going to be continuous, okay, with a dense rank. Then finally, with a row number, even when there's a tie, they're going to be kind of successive. No rows can share the same value with a row number. Like, this feels too detailed, but unfortunately, welcome to LeetCode. This stuff comes up. You will have to know this stuff well, and it's only going to get more detailed than this. Like I said, window functions. I use them when I use them in practice. Like, I just look it up and figure it out. But for interviews, you have to know this stuff cold, which again is like why we're covering it now. It's not what I would teach if I wasn't teaching to the test, but we are. All right. So yeah, you're gonna have to know this stuff and just review it. This is definitely material I would make an outline on, right, to like really lock it in. And like I said, we're gonna kind of have to use this stuff. You build on this knowledge for LeetCode. Okay. So just really try to focus on this part. Cool. Oh, by the way, so I do have the solution for this IMDb lab if you want to take a look at it. And then this is the section that we're going to get to next, which is sliding window functions. So I'll deploy this stuff as well, and we can also talk about it in the next class.